After my parents gave our family home to my sister and left me with nothing, I just grinned. When they tried to move into their new place, the guard refused entry, and my sister called Mom in a panic. The attorney's office carried this rich mix of pricey wood polish and worn-out leather, the sort of environment where big signatures decide the fate of families, pretending everything is polite and proper while secretly dividing their entire lives. My name's Jack, I'm 34 years old, and I sat across from my parents and my sister Lisa as a guy in a suit that probably cost $5,000 calmly explained how I was getting erased from my inheritance. So to make it clear, Mr. Carter said while nudging his glasses up his nose, the house located at 512 Oak Lane will belong completely to Lisa Ortiz. Jack will no longer hold any share or claim to the property. Are we all in agreement about these terms? My mom shot me a nervous glance. My dad stared down at the paperwork like he was trying to decode hidden messages. Lisa attempted to keep the grin off her face and failed miserably. Jack, Mr. Carter asked me directly, do you understand what's being set up here? I leaned back in the chair, crossed my arms, and let a real smile form. Nothing bitter, nothing fake, just this amused, honest expression. I get it perfectly. Mom let out a breath and relaxed. Oh, thank goodness. We were worried you'd be upset. Why would I be upset? My dad's brows pulled tight. Because we're giving the home to your sister. The one you grew up in. The one that's worth around $800,000. I know exactly what it's worth, Dad. And you're okay with all of this? Lisa asked with that suspicious tone she used whenever she thought a trap was nearby. I'm totally fine with it. Just like that? You're fine? Just like that. Mr. Carter cleared his throat like he was trying to steer things forward. All right then. If no one has any objections, we'll continue with the signatures. He pushed the pages toward us. Mom signed first, her hand trembling a bit. Dad signed next, fast and confident, like he was approving a business transaction. Lisa signed last, pressing the pen down so hard it looked like she was staking her claim. Then the attention swung back to me. Jack also needs to sign, Mr. Carter explained, acknowledging that he understands the transfer and releases any future rights. I took the pen, scanned the document again, reading through every single line, each condition spelling out that I was willingly walking away from $800,000. Then I signed my name. Lisa actually gasped, like she'd been expecting me to flip the desk or throw a tantrum at the last second. That's it, she sputtered. You're just signing? What did you want me to do? Deliver some dramatic speech about justice? Storm out in a rage? I thought you might at least ask why. I placed the pen down and looked straight at my parents. Why exactly are you giving the house entirely to Lisa? Dad squirmed in his chair. Your sister's gone through a rough patch recently. The divorce. Losing her job. She needs something steady right now. And I don't. You've got stability, Mom rushed to add. You've got a career. Your own apartment. You're doing well for yourself. So this is basically charity for Lisa. It isn't charity, Lisa snapped. It's family supporting family. Interesting version of family, I muttered. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded. Nothing. Forget it. I stood up. Are we done? Mr. Carter collected the forms. Yes, that's everything. The transfer should be completed in about 30 days. Lisa, you'll get the deed by mail. Thank you, Lisa said, watching me like I was some kind of puzzle she couldn't solve. I shook Mr. Carter's hand, nodded at my parents, and walked out with the exact same calm face I'd worn from the moment this whole thing began. In the parking lot, my mom hurried after me. Jack, wait. Please. I stopped, turned around. Are you really okay with all of this? You're acting too calm. What would you like me to say, Mom? That my heart is breaking? That I feel stabbed in the back? I want the truth. And I am telling the truth. I'm okay with it. But the house was always supposed to be shared between the two of you. We always promised everything would be even. Plans change. I get it. Do you? Because you're acting strange. I gave her that same easy smile, the one clearly freaking them all out. Mom, I swear, I am totally fine with you handing the place to Lisa. She needs it more than I do. You're not mad? Not even a little? She wrapped her arms around me. You're such a wonderful brother. Lisa is lucky to have you. I hugged her back, but didn't say a thing. When she walked back to their car, Lisa was waving her arms around while Mom shook her head and Dad just looked confused through the windshield. I got into my own car and drove away without another glance. Because here's the truth they didn't know. I'd been bracing for this for half a year. Ever since Thanksgiving, when I accidentally overheard them whispering about the Lisa situation. how she blew through her divorce payout, how she was crashing in a rental she couldn't afford, how they needed to help her but didn't trust her with money because she'd burned through it instantly. Maybe we give her the house, Dad suggested. It's supposed to be for both kids. Mom replied, Jack's doing fine. He won't miss it. And Lisa needs a stable asset she can't just cash out. I had been in the kitchen grabbing more wine. They were in the dining room, talking low, but not low enough. They had absolutely no clue I heard every single word. That was 6 months ago. 6 months of preparation on my side. 6 months of them dropping casual hints about estate planning and fairness while secretly plotting to cut me out of $800,000. When I got to my apartment, I parked, headed inside, sat at my desk, and opened a folder on my computer labeled Operation Payback. Inside were 6 months' worth of work, property details, financial info, legal notes. A strategy so carefully mapped out it would have impressed someone in the military. Because while Mom and Dad were quietly figuring out how to hand Lisa the family home, I'd been figuring out my own response, something I made sure they wouldn't discover until there was absolutely nothing they could do to reverse it. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. We should talk about the house. Dinner tonight? I stared at her message. Lisa asking me to dinner. Lisa who hadn't included me in anything for 3 years unless she wanted a favor. Can't tonight. Work stuff. Rain check? Sure. But seriously, thank you for being cool with this. I know it's strange, but I really need this right now. I know you do. You're the best brother. I set the phone down and turned right back to my computer. I opened a file dated 4 months earlier, a purchase contract for a condo at 2847 Sterling Plaza, Unit 604, the place my parents had been living for the last couple of years since they downsized from the old family home. They were simply renting it. What they didn't realize was that I had purchased that condo 3 months ago the moment it hit the market. They had no clue. The former owner agreed to let them finish out their lease quietly, which was set to expire in just 30 days. Everything had been handled with property management in the middle, no personal names involved, no direct links. When that lease ran out in a month, they'd get a clean, formal notice that the new landlord didn't plan to renew. They would be required to move out. And if they decided to figure out who exactly owned the building, they'd learn the property was held by an LLC, Sterling Holdings Group, and that limited liability company was registered directly to me. My phone rang. Dad's name. Hey, Jack, he said, just checking in. Want to make sure you're honestly okay with everything. I'm great, Dad. Really? You sure? Because you were awfully calm back there. Your mother's been worried sick. Tell her she doesn't need to worry. Honestly, I'm better than okay. What does that mean? It means I'm happy for Lisa. She could use some positive news after what she's gone through. That's very mature of you. Guess I learned from you both. He spent a few more minutes reassuring himself, explaining once again why they'd made their decision and how it wasn't personal, and how someday they'd make it right. I said all the polite things, kept my tone friendly and supportive, let him feel noble. When we hung up, I reopened another document. The eviction timeline, legal guidelines, required notice periods. Everything perfectly handled. Everything above board. Everything inevitable. And the best part was that I hadn't done a single thing wrong. I simply made a smart real estate purchase in a neighborhood gaining value. The fact that my parents happened to live in that particular unit? Just a coincidence. A very expensive, very carefully figured out coincidence. My laptop dinged with an email from property management. Mr. Chun, confirming delivery of non-renewal paperwork for Unit 604 on schedule, exactly 30 days prior to lease in per local regulations. Current tenants Robert and Linda Chun will be notified on April 15th. Please confirm to proceed. I typed back, confirmed. Continue as planned. Send the notices. Then I shut the laptop and wore that same calm grin I'd worn during the meeting at Mr. Carter's office. Because 1 month from now, my parents would open their mail to find out they were losing their home. They'd scramble. They'd panic. They would absolutely turn to Lisa for help. And Lisa, sitting pretty in her newly gifted property that should have partly been mine, would face a choice. Take them in or let them struggle. The place had more than enough room for guests. Enough space in the finished basement to convert into an in-law suite. It was the exact reason my parents justified giving it to her, that she needed something steady. She would take them in. She'd have no option. And then over time they'd start driving each other insane. Moms need to micromanage everything. Dad's endless retirement hobby projects. Lisa's lousy boundary skills. All of them locked together under one roof. The roof that should have partly belonged to me. Meanwhile, I'd still be in my rent-controlled place, peaceful, watching from afar while the gift that was supposed to rescue Lisa slowly turned into the thing that trapped her. I didn't crave revenge exactly. I wanted consequences. I wanted them to understand that actions ripple, that you can't rob someone of a massive inheritance and expect them to just swallow it without a reaction. I had smiled. They simply misread what that smile represented. They thought it meant surrender. It didn't. It meant I was already several steps ahead. The first 2 weeks after giving up my share of the house were quiet. Mom called twice, checking to see if I was genuinely all right. Both times I kept that same calm voice that rattled her more than any rage-filled outburst could have. Lisa texted a handful of times. Updates about paint colors, pictures of appliances, her excitement bursting through emojis. Can't believe this is really my house. She typed. I sent back a simple thumbs up. I filled those weeks with work and reviewing property management updates. Sterling Plaza was a great structure, a strong investment overall. Unit 604, my parents' apartment, was small and modest, 2 bedrooms with a tiny balcony. They'd moved there after selling the old house and embracing their version of living simple. Simple meaning cheaper. They put the leftover profit into retirement savings. The same savings they were now draining to help Lisa. During the 3rd week, the property manager called again. Mr. Chun, just a reminder. Notices will be delivered on the 15th. Tenants may request meetings. Should we redirect them to you? Have them email the LLC contact. I'll handle everything. I circled April 15th in my calendar. The day eviction would land in their mailbox. Perfect timing too. Lisa's official deed would be finalized then. My phone vibrated with another message from Lisa. Hey, want to come see the house? I'm here with Mom and Dad measuring things. I stared at her text. They were all there together. Setting up Lisa's fresh start in the property meant to be partly mine. Can't today. Client meeting. Okay, but soon. We miss you. Later that evening, I drove past the house anyway. Parked where I could watch without being seen. Through the large front window, I saw them. Lisa waving her arms, Mom nodding along, Dad measuring something near a wall. The house where I grew up. Lisa's house now. And they were helping her build a life inside it. I stayed there for 10 long minutes. Then I drove over to Sterling Plaza. Looked up to the 6th floor at Unit 604. Lights on, my parents comfortable, probably not thinking about me one bit. April 10th, 5 days before the notices, Lisa called. Jack, we need to talk. Mom said you've been driving by the house. Mrs. Parker spotted me, apparently, which wasn't ideal. Damn, I just happened to be in the area, I told myself, even if it was for a whole hour. Jack, what's going on? Lisa asked over the phone. You're acting off. I insisted I was fine and said she was the one acting strange. That smile, she said, the same one from the meeting with Mr. Carter, the one that shows up every time the house comes up. It's like you know something we don't. She wasn't wrong about that. I responded that I was just being supportive, nothing more. Then why keep smiling? She pushed. Lisa, I swear, everything is totally fine. She stayed silent for a beat before saying it was weird and that I was being weird. After we hung up, I made a mental note to dial back the smirking. April 13th rolled around, just 2 days before everything. Mom emailed saying she and Dad wanted to take me to dinner Saturday because they felt like they hadn't seen me much. Could I do 6 p.m. at Romano's? They'd pay. Saturday was April 15th, the exact afternoon the eviction notice would hit their mailbox. I could avoid them or show up and watch from the front row when the world tilted under their feet. Saturday works, I wrote. What time? She replied with the same, 6 p.m. Then April 15th arrived. At around 2 in the afternoon, the property manager texted me. All notices delivered, including the one to Unit 604 at 1:47 p.m. Tenant signed for it. Meaning someone, very likely Mom, opened that envelope and understood immediately what was coming. By 3 p.m., my phone lit up with calls from Mom. I ignored them. Then Dad tried. Then Mom again. I muted everything. The texts followed fast. Jack, please call me. Urgent. Then another from Dad, needing to talk. Mom begging again. Then Lisa. Mom is freaking out about something with the apartment. Have you spoken to them? I replied only to her. Not yet. What's happening? She said they got a notice saying the lease wouldn't be renewed and they had 30 days to move. Mom was melting down. That's awful, I wrote. I'm sure it's some kind of misunderstanding. She asked me to call them. I said I would, after dinner. At 5 p.m., I drove over to Romano's and got there early, grabbed a beer to look casual. At 5:45, Dad's SUV rolled up. Mom stepped out first, and I could see from the doorway that she had been crying. Dad followed looking like he'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. Mom rushed to me the second she saw me. Did you get our messages? She asked. I nodded and said the phone had been off for work. What's going on? She slid into the booth like she needed to sit before collapsing. We got kicked out, she said. Our landlord won't renew the lease. 30 days to leave. I widened my eyes for effect. What? Why in the world? We have no idea, she answered. The notice just says the owner refused renewal. Nothing else. That makes no sense, I said. Can they even do that? It's legal, Dad muttered. The lawyer confirmed it since the lease is almost up. Have you reached out to the property owner? I asked. They explained that the place belonged to some LLC, Sterling Holdings Group, with nothing but a generic email address. Dad had already tried sending a message but gotten no reply yet. I sipped my beer slowly. That sounds unbelievably stressful. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Mom said they had no idea what to do. 30 days wasn't nearly enough time. I suggested maybe they stay with Lisa for a bit, since the house was huge. They hesitated, saying they didn't want to impose. She's got 4 bedrooms and a finished basement, I reminded them. You wouldn't be imposing at all. Dad tried to be optimistic, saying they'd figure something out. We ordered when the waiter returned, and the silence at the table grew thick. Then Mom's phone rang. It was Lisa. She answered and talked briefly, listening more than speaking, and her expression changed like she wasn't sure how to feel. When she hung up, she said Lisa offered her basement indefinitely until they land on their feet. That's great, I said with that tiny smile. See, everything always works out. Dad stared at me like he was trying to read a secret off my face. You're really calm about all this, he said. Calm about what? I asked like I didn't see the connection. Your parents losing their place, he clarified. I told him I was upset for them, but that Lisa had space and everything would be fine now. Still, he said, it's unusual how relaxed you are. I shrugged and said I learned not to waste energy on things outside my control. Mom reached for my hand. We're sorry about the house situation. We truly should have discussed it more with you. I smiled and squeezed back, saying it was all good. She asked if it really was. I told her I was exactly the same as always. They were just noticing it now. We ate and they talked about searching for a smaller apartment and how lucky they were that Lisa stepped up for them. I gave supportive nods and sympathetic noises while mentally counting down. 30 days until they moved beneath Lisa's roof. 30 days until that gift meant to rescue my sister became her own personal trap. 30 days until the lesson sunk in. Choices come with consequences. And I'd watch from the perfectly safe distance I'd always been at. Move-in day hit on May 20th, 5 days late thanks to scrambling and logistics. I didn't offer to help, and no one asked. Lisa sent updates all day long. Movers struggling with boxes, Mom crying about leaving, Dad griping about delays. By evening it was finished. My parents were officially living in her basement. Settled in, she texted with a picture of them buried in cardboard, looking worn down. I wrote back, great. Hope everything goes smoothly. She said it was only temporary and that they'd find a new place soon. I already knew better. Week 1, Lisa called to vent. Mom had reorganized her entire kitchen while she was at work, claiming Lisa's setup made no sense, and Dad had fired up loud tools in the garage early Sunday morning. I told her to give it time, even though I knew patience wasn't Mom's strong suit. Lisa muttered that she thought owning a house meant personal freedom. I reminded myself not to laugh. Week 2, Dad called. Jack, talk to your sister, he insisted. She's overreacting. We're only trying to help, and she's acting like we're invaders. I reminded him they were living in her space, not the other way around. It's the family house, he shot back. We gave it to her. Exactly, I said. You gave it to her. It's hers now. But we're family, he repeated, voice tight. And I asked him how long the stay was supposed to last. We're looking, he said. But everything we can afford is tiny or in rough neighborhoods. We may need a few months. A few months. It had barely been 2 weeks. I asked if they'd thought about stretching their budget, but Dad said they couldn't because the house transfer wiped them out with legal fees and they were still helping Emily financially. He insisted they'd figure something out, then asked if I could pitch in and help cover their rent. There it was, the real ask. I told him no. He demanded to know why, reminding me that Emily was my sister and the house had originally been meant to be half mine. I told him he made a choice, and now he was living with the outcome. He said I was being cold, and I told him it was just reality, the same kind he'd always preached. He hung up on me. By week 3, Emily's ex-husband Mark called out of nowhere. He said she'd been crying to him, saying the house might have been a mistake and our parents were driving her insane. I asked why he was calling me about it, and he said she'd mentioned something strange, that I'd been too calm ever since the house thing happened, like I was mad but hiding it, planning something. My heart kicked up a little. He said she thought I was behind the eviction. I told him that was ridiculous. How could I possibly do that? He said he didn't know, but I should talk to her because she was spiraling. That night, Emily showed up at my place without warning. She said we needed to talk, marched inside, and didn't even sit down. She stared at me and said my calmness was creepy, that my weird smiles were setting off alarms. I told her I was just trying to be supportive. She called that bullshit and pointed out how convenient it was that Mom and Dad got evicted right after she got the house. She asked if I arranged it. I asked how I'd even do that, but she said I was good with finances and real estate and way too chill about losing $800,000. She was dangerously close to the truth. I insisted I had nothing to do with it. She demanded to know why I was acting so strange, and I said I was behaving like an adult accepting something he couldn't control, which she wasn't used to seeing from me. She said this should be upsetting, that they gave her everything. I said I knew that. She asked if I was really okay with it. I asked what she wanted. Would me breaking down make her feel better? She admitted yes, at least then I'd seem human. I handed her a beer and told her I was human, just practical, and that anger didn't change anything. I told her the house was hers and I was moving on. She said Mark thought I was planning something, and I told her Mark didn't know me anymore. She took a long drink and said once she figured out what I was up to, we'd be having a different kind of conversation. I told her I couldn't wait. She left the beer unfinished and stormed out. In week 4, Mom called sobbing that she and Dad had gotten into a fight with Emily and that Emily wanted them out by next month. I told her that was fair. They'd been there a month already. She said they couldn't find anything affordable and everything decent cost too much. I suggested increasing the budget again, and she repeated that they couldn't because they'd given Emily a bunch of money for closing costs. They had literally paid expenses on a house they gifted to her. I told her I didn't know what to say and that she needed to talk to Emily, not me. She asked when I'd become so cold, and I told her I learned from the experts. Then I hung up. Later that night, Emily texted from a different number and told me to come to the house tomorrow at noon for a family meeting, no excuses. I showed up 5 minutes early, and she opened the door before I even knocked. She warned me they were in the living room and told me to brace myself. Mom sat crying and blotchy. Dad was tight-jawed and furious. Emily closed the door and told me to sit. She said we needed to talk about what came next, that Mom and Dad needed their own place. She needed her home back, and I needed to stop acting like I wasn't part of all this. I asked what I was supposedly involved in, and she said whatever scheme I was running. The timing of the eviction right after the house transfer, my creepy grin at the lawyer's office. She said she'd called the management company for Sterling Plaza and asked who owned the property, and they told her Sterling Holdings Group LLC. So she looked up the owner through public records. I felt my stomach tighten. She asked if I wanted to guess who registered the LLC. Mom and Dad both turned toward me as Emily said, voice shaking, that it was registered to Jake Carter. She told me flat out, I owned their building. I was the one who evicted our parents. The room froze. Mom covered her mouth and Dad stared like he didn't recognize me. Mom whispered if it was true. I looked them all in the eyes, saw the betrayal and disbelief, and let that same lawyer office smile stretch across my face. I said yes, it was true. The silence felt like it lasted forever. Then Mom broke into loud sobbing and Dad's shock turned into pure rage. He called me a son of a bitch and tried to lunge, but Emily held his arm. He said I'd been planning this for months, and I told him 6 months actually. Ever since Thanksgiving when I heard them choosing to give Emily everything. Mom gasped and asked if I had known the entire time. I said yes, and I prepared accordingly. Dad accused me of forcing them into Emily's house and ruining their lives. I told him I didn't ruin anything, that I made a smart, legal investment. Emily called it calculated revenge, and I said landlords deny lease renewals every day. Dad snapped at me not to play dumb. that I knew exactly what I was doing, just like they knew exactly what they were doing when they handed Emily $800,000 and expected me to just accept it. He said that was different. I asked how. They made a decision that helped her and hurt me, and I made a decision that helped me and hurt them. What made theirs righteous and mine cruel? Mom stood up and said the difference was that they were my parents. And I reminded her that I was their son, but that didn't stop them from treating me like I didn't matter. She tried to deny it, and I repeated it, louder. They gave Emily the entire house and never talked to me about it, just assumed I'd swallow it. Emily said I had smiled. I told her I smiled because I had already won. I had already bought the building. I was 3 steps ahead. Dad got close and said I wasn't the son he raised. And I told him he was wrong. I was exactly the son he raised. He taught me that in this family, everything is just strategy. I told them I'd learned the lesson that Emily's needs always seemed to matter more than how I felt, and I learned it extremely well. Mom whispered that they never forgot about me, but I reminded her they'd handed away my inheritance without even checking in, mapping out Emily's future while never once asking about mine, and that was a choice they made. Emily sat down and asked if this whole thing was punishment, making them all live together under her roof. I said no, it was simply consequences, because she wanted the house, and a house comes with responsibilities like taking in family whether it's convenient or not. She asked what I even wanted. Was I expecting them to beg? I said I wanted them to know exactly how it felt to be shut out, overlooked, and expected to sacrifice while nobody notices. Emily said they understood now, that they really did. I asked if they truly did, because admitting they were wrong didn't magically restore the inheritance I lost. Emily snapped back, wanting to know what I wanted then. Did I want the house returned to me? And she said fine, I could take it because she couldn't keep up with it anyway while dealing with them living there. That threw me off. I asked what she meant, and she explained that this wasn't some dream life. Mom reorganizing every inch of her home and Dad tinkering nonstop. It had become a nightmare, and she told me I'd won if winning was what I wanted. Mom tried to stop her, but Emily said the truth was the house that was supposed to save her had ended up trapping her. I looked at my sister and really looked. She dropped weight, had dark circles under her eyes, and she looked older, worn down. I told her I didn't want the house. She asked again what I did want. That was actually a good question, and after 6 months of planning every step, I realized I didn't have a clean answer. So why didn't this feel like victory? I repeated that I just needed them to understand the burden of being the one always giving without recognition, and Emily said quietly that they understood. I got up and went to the door. Dad asked if that was it. I destroy everything and walk away, and I told him that's what they did to me in that lawyer's office, and now they finally knew how it felt. Mom called my name and said they loved me. I turned back and said I believed them. But love doesn't mean much when it only counts if Emily benefits, when my feelings never weigh the same. And she tried to argue, but I told her that was the truth, and until they saw it clearly, we didn't have anything else to say. Then I left. 2 weeks passed before Emily called and said she was selling the house because she couldn't handle the mortgage or the maintenance or our parents anymore. I asked where Mom and Dad would go, and she said they'd found a small place that fit their budget and would be moving in next month. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and sent my property manager an email asking them to contact Robert and Linda Chun and offer them Unit 604 again with the same terms they had before. I hit send before I could back out of it. The next day, Mom called and said the property company contacted them and offered their old apartment, and she asked if it was me. I told her yes. She got quiet and asked why, and I said because I'd made my point and because they were still my parents and that had to mean something. She asked if that meant I forgave them, and I told her I wasn't sure yet, but it did mean I wasn't going to keep making them suffer. She asked if we could try again as a family, and I thought about the house I'd never see again and everything I'd done over those 6 months. I said maybe, but if we tried again, things would have to change. I wouldn't be the easygoing one anymore, and Emily wouldn't get special treatment. Mom said okay. I told her everything from now on had to be split evenly, including whatever they left behind someday, 50-50, no negotiating. She agreed, and I said then maybe we could try. 6 months later, we were sitting around a Sunday dinner table in Mom and Dad's apartment at Sterling Plaza. Emily was there too, in a smaller place she could actually afford now, and she looked lighter, less weighed down. We ate pot roast and talked about regular things. Nobody brought up the house or the eviction. But I could feel that something had changed. Dad caught himself before trying to boss me around. Mom asked before making decisions that involved me, and Emily actually asked me for help directly instead of running to our parents. We weren't the family we used to be. That version was gone. But maybe we were forming something that worked, something honest, or at least something that didn't hurt as much. Either way, I wasn't wearing that calculating smile anymore, because it had finally sunk in that revenge doesn't fix anything. It just exposes who everyone really is, and sometimes that's all you need.